Hey everyone, and you got to forgive me a little bit if I'm a little bit lost for words, which usually doesn't happen, but I don't know. There's just things that I have to cover in regards to the economic situation in Canada and how this is all playing out and how it's unfolding. That just not only does it bother me the fact that I even have to point this out, to me it's like, come on, this should be so blatantly obvious to everyone. I mean, if you're old enough to walk and talk, like stand on your own 2 feet, then you should at least have a decent grasp or understanding that this is absolute nonsense. It's blatant bullshit, and at the end of the day, all it really is an attempt to ramp up this push for mass immigration or the great replacement, as I've called it. And I don't know what it is. I don't know, other than the unfunded liabilities and entitlements promised to that big, giant public sector in this country, which represents 4.1 million people all add. That, to me, is the only thing that I can convince myself that makes sense as to why they keep pumping up this bullshit. I just can't understand, because the narrative, the way they portray it, but that's the thing, they try to manipulate you. They won't ever come out and be just honest with you. But so we have to always read between the lines and try to figure out, well, what the hell are they trying to say here? But at the end of the day, when you're talking about this massive push for immigration, whether it's the government or the corporate class in this country, at the end of the day, they're showing a complete and utter willingness to destroy any progress or any potential for economic gain for existing or old stock Canadians in order to increase the GDP level somehow, or, like I say, fill up those government coffers with more taxpayers or wage slaves, or give corporations cheaper labor because they want to compete with more corporations that are looking for even cheaper labor. That's the problem with this globalism. It has turned into a race to the bottom recently rather than a way to raise and elevate. We're going the wrong direction, folks. Well, at least in modern Western developed societies or countries such as Canada. I mean, sure, it sounds good that you want to bring immigrants here and give them jobs, but then you got to think on the other side of the equation is, yes, you might have a bleeding heart for a foreigner or an immigrant, but why don't you have any bleeding heart or care concern for the Canadians that are already here? Why don't you understand how this kind of economic balance works? Central planners have shown time and time again, whether they come from the Liberal Party in this country or the Conservative Party or the NDP, they've all shown time and time again is they don't care about the working class or the poor. Even now, what's Trudeau talking about? The middle class, the middle class, the middle class. Does he ever talk about the poor? Of course not. Matter of fact, people like that, they don't even really know what the hell the poor is, other than the odd time they might see a homeless person while they're being chauffeured in their limo. But like I say, is anyone ever talking about the poor? No. Well, other than to create some extra layer of bureaucracy or more public sector jobs that get to suckle on the teat of the already soaked and sponged taxpayers, the working poor at this point in time, who have this now to contend with. Now, before I read the headline, I will say, there may very well be some shortages in some particular sectors of the economy that you just somehow, I don't know, magically or mysteriously or miraculously can't find anyone to train in those fields in Canada. Somehow the 37 million Canadians in this country, somehow, I guess it's impossible to do so. So we have to look elsewhere to fill these positions. But for these kind of examples, I mean, come on. How foolish, naive, or gullible do you have to be to believe nonsense such as this? Headline of the CBC News Business: Restaurant industry faces critical worker shortage as holiday demand peaks. There are more than 67,000 vacant positions in bars and food service. This being reported by Brandy Wakel, December 24th, 2019. Restaurants are facing a critical shortage of workers that's impeding new business and limiting capacity during the holiday season. A critical time of year for profitability, industry experts say. Of course it's an industry expert. This is what we're constantly inundated with daily now by our thought leaders and opinion makers, is that the only people that we need to listen to are those they reference as experts. Anyone outside of that, don't pay no attention. People like myself, don't worry about Bennett. He's not an expert, so he doesn't know anything. Really? But what have these people done to become experts? That I would really love to know. Anyways, let's move on. Veteran chef and restaurateur Hemant Bhagwani has planned to open his new restaurant, Papa in Toronto's Bayview Village Shopping Center on December 1st. but still doesn't have enough staff to operate. For the key position of chef, not a single application has come in, said Bhagwani. Although Papa or Popa will specialize in Burmese cuisine, which he traveled to Myanmar to learn, Bhagwani said he's not holding out for a chef with specialized skills. I don't mind people from any other cuisine, Mexican, French. I can train them. In the third quarter of this year, the most recent period for which numbers are available, there were 67,370 vacant jobs in food service and drinking establishments across the country, according to Statistics Canada, the highest it's been in nearly 5 years. Anyways, before I go on, folks, so it's just restaurant and the food industry and chefs, people that know how to cook. So there's no one in Canada, apparently. Apparently, out of the 37 million Canadians or however many people are in Toronto or wherever this person's restaurant is at, apparently there's just nobody, and they're saying not even one application. Apparently there's nobody that can fill that position. But the way this is being presented and portrayed is, I don't know what, lack of skills, lack of competence, lack of ability, lack of people? I would suggest not. As far as I'm concerned, sounds like a low wage situation where the people that would apply for these kinds of positions realize that, oh, yeah, I'd like to do that, but because it is Toronto after all, or wherever this place is, the rent's like $2,500 a month, and if you're paying me minimum wage or just slightly above that, well, I can't even pay the rent, never mind put food in my mouth. That does have a little effect too, But of course these people don't want to think that way. They just, like I say, all they think about is their own bottom line, and they don't give a shit how many people get hurt along the way of filling it or making sure that they're profitable. Listen, if I was running a restaurant, I don't care where the hell it is, in Canada or anywhere around the world, if I can't make it viable and pay my employees a livable wage, then I just wouldn't start the business. And instead of trying to finger wag or look for slave or dirt cheap labor from foreign countries, I join people like myself, libertarians, or people that care about freedom and liberty and understand what kind of Ponzi scheme we got going on these days. Is I'd be pointing my finger at those in government and the corporate class that have all but destroyed economic prosperity and productivity in this country. Humans function under incentive, folks. And what we're seeing based on the rhetoric, the messaging, and the articles constantly coming out of publications such as the CBC is the only incentive is to look for the lowest paid employees, dirt cheap labor as humanly possible, and be damned those who don't want to work at those ridiculously low levels. The message I keep seeing and hearing is, hey, either you work like a slave or you've got no place in Canadian society. Well, except for what? Joining government coffers, joining the public sector, or getting on the government dole in some way? Because that does seem to be something that's very prevalent these days as well. I guess a lot of Canadians have finally given up trying to beat bureaucracy and big government and have decided, well, if you can't beat them, you might as well join them. Well, eventually, if we all turn to socialism and we're for big government, well, who's on the hook to pay the bills at that point in time? Because that means nobody's being genuinely productive in the marketplace, which is where all that money, genuinely, proper money, proper economic prosperity and productivity, that's where it all originates and comes from. Which is why you've never seen any communist country, China included, who could function under that kind of closed in or closed down type of regime. No, even China has to use Hong Kong and Shanghai and that third way mix with capitalism as the underpinning for the economic prosperity and growth as a means to sustain even their own communist utopias. Although, let me tell you, not much of a utopia. Ask yourself how many Canadians would like to move to China and live there. That's the thing. For all you people that love communism or socialism, why the hell aren't you all deciding to move to these countries that constantly promote it and make it entirely the central focus of their economic system? Why aren't you going there? Why try to turn Canada or the US or England, these Western capitalist individualistic societies, why try to turn us into these socialist or communist type countries when you have access to them? There are these places around the world that you can go to. If you like your communism, you like your socialism. Matter of fact, if you want to use those Nordic countries that you pretend they're all socialist, go live in them. Go move to Sweden, Finland, and Norway, all these places, especially all you upper middle class elitists that constantly talk about these Nordic countries. Well, go the hell live in them. But in reality, if you're parasitical or truly a socialist, as you put on, they won't even take you. Because even the Nordic countries have realized you don't cut off the capitalist underpinnings while you're trying to build your little socialist or communist utopia. Because it all comes crashing down the moment you do. Anyways, folks, I don't want to waste too much time in this article. But once again, the food industry, right? Restaurants, really? Servers, waitresses, chefs, really? No Canadians can do these jobs, huh? Really? I call BS. Once again, this is just one more aspect of that race to the bottom that the central planners in this country want to take us in a real hurry. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.